another Expert Live. I don't know about you, but I am freezing today. I'm not adjusting to the colder weather very well, so forgive me for my whole scarf get up here, but I'm freezing. So hopefully we're trying to time these right around nap time so you can put your kiddos down or maybe and come and join and get some tips to make your family life easier. Hopefully you've been enjoying our live. And there she is. Hello, Kristen. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you.
I'm also not appreciating. I'm also not appreciating the cold.
Not appreciating the cold. Yeah, I was actually complaining on Saturday. I was like, why is it so hot in October? I was sweating. It's like the universe heard me and is now punishing me because, wow, did the temperature drop and my fingertips are turning purple.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hopefully we will get some families joining us soon. But while we're waiting, let me do a little introduction for you. So this is Kristen Quinn at Mealtime Helper, also Toddlers and Tomatoes. And basically you help families make meal times easier, less stressful, more successful. Yeah, and that's what we want to talk about today are some tips for our pickier eaters or kiddos who are having trouble at either school lunches, which we're going to talk about because that's probably a hot topic on parents' minds, or even meals at home. And I would say that a lot of this boils down to, I was thinking before we started, just making adjustments, which I know you're going to talk about in our portion sizes, in how we present the food to our kiddos, and maybe even in our own expectations for what they're going to eat, how much they're going to eat, and when in their day they're going to eat it. So we're going to talk about all those adjustments today. Okay, so I have some viewer questions, some frequently asked questions that we're going to go over. Obviously, if anybody watching has a question about stressful mealtime behaviors, picky eating, feel free to throw it in the chat and we will get to that. Before we dive in, anything else you want to tell families about who you are, what you do? Do you want to just dive right in?
Sure. I mean, I can give a little disclaimer. I am not a medical professional or a dietitian, so some of my advice may at first be a little bit different than what you might expect, say, if you were consulting with one of those medical professionals, because I sort of come at it a little bit differently and focus on the experience of the mealtime and how to make that less stressful for everybody, which isn't always the first thought when you think food. When you think food, you think nutrition and diet and medical stuff. But
Okay, got it. Well, less stress is always a good thing. So let's start with that idea of setting our expectations. How much would we expect a toddler or a preschooler to eat? And also how often?
So this is a very common question. It is hard as adults who eat regularly, eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, eat when you're hungry, and eat full adult-sized portions. It's hard sometimes to adjust to what the little ones need. As a general rule, young kiddos and adults too function well on a 3-meal, 2-snack schedule. And as far as how much they need to eat, a toddler like 2, 3, 4, you want to look at your fist size, and that's a good starting point. But my caveat is if you're putting a fist size amount of food on their plate and they're always leaving it, you probably need to cut it back. And that might fall outside of the guidelines that you saw on Google or the guidelines that the pediatrician sent home with you in terms of numbers of calorie amounts or ounces. But from my perspective, what you want to do is adjust to what your child is telling you they are willing and able to do. So if you put a scoop of broccoli, which is 4 or 5 pieces, and they consistently always leave 4 pieces and 1 left, then maybe start with 1 piece of broccoli and see how that goes. And that's going to feel better both for your kiddo and for you, because you're going to start at a place where they're more likely to cooperate.
Got it. Okay, so the idea is to start where they are,
Mm.
maybe not stay there forever, but just get everybody feeling like it went well
It's
instead of feeling frustrated or overwhelmed by what they're seeing.
absolutely, yeah.
Got it. Okay. So what about for the kiddo? I guess we kind of touched on this, who always leaves food on their plate and barely touches anything. Is there a way to get them to eat more, or do you feel like you already answered that in the first one?
So I feel like in order to get the most cooperation, it might be helpful to think about meal times more in a visual, except I talk a lot about visual fullness with my families. If you put a plate full of food in front of your child and they immediately shut down, it's possible that it's not really that they don't want the food, but there's so much in front of them, too many options, maybe too many different kinds of foods, and it can be overwhelming. So I've had a lot of success with families just kind of keeping the plate, the full plate to the side and doling out little bits at a time. And that's going to give you some really good information as to where they're at. You mentioned, meeting them where they're at, and helping them to feel successful. So if you observe your child, and adjust to what you see they're ready for, everybody's going to feel a lot better. Your child's going to feel more successful. You're going to feel more satisfied that they're not wasting the food that you've put in front of them. And you can build on that. It's a foundation. So even, you start with small servings and then you build on it based on how they're responding.
Got it. Okay. So let's go to my older daughter ate everything I gave her. My son won't eat anything at all outside of his preferred foods. He will barely touch them. I'm frustrated. What can I do? They're all similar to each other, right?
So it's very common to have your first child and it goes one way or another, and then to expect that same experience when subsequent kiddos come along. And just like grown-ups, kids are different. And I keep going back to how to manage the experience of meal times, and the best way to do that is to sort of check your own expectations going in. So if you know that your son is a totally different personality, has different interactions with food, then you're going to have to adjust how you present the food to him. So maybe your older daughter gets a full plate of food and she does great and she loves it and she loves to eat. And maybe for your younger son, it's a chore still. And, that's hard for parents to hear because, a lot of adults really enjoy at least some foods. The eating is a social time. They enjoy coming to the table as adults. They have foods that they want, but for some kiddos, it's something they have to do. They don't necessarily want to do it. I would say if your younger child is significantly different than your older child in how they interact with the food, then you might want to start paying attention. What foods are harder? Do you notice any difficulty with their chewing and swallowing? Do you notice other sensory stuff going on at mealtimes or outside of mealtimes? I just think it's important to keep in mind that they're all different, and don't make any assumptions based on what your first child did, and just try to observe why is it different, what's making it different, and is there a way to make it easier for each child.
And I know I've heard you say in the past, you probably have to present the non-preferred foods infinitely more times than you wish you would before they might even think about
Absolutely
trying.
And so this is, I'm a parent myself with a young child with 3 kids, and it's very difficult to change your own expectations. Of course, you make the food, you want them to love it, you want them to eat it, but it's not always that simple. And I think if you come at it as they're learning a skill, and it takes time, and even though it's frustrating, you may have to put that piece of that vegetable or that fruit or that meat in front of them several times before they even consider putting it in their mouth. So it definitely takes a lot of patience.
Yeah, definitely, which is something we're all a little short on. All right, so what about for the parent who's tried all the tricks, right? Hiding food, cute shapes, cooking with my child. Nothing works to get them to try new things or eat what I put on their plate. Why?
So all those things are great. They are great exposure. The occupational therapists out there will tell you that the more interaction they have with the different sensory experiences with the different food is awesome. It helps them develop their fine motor skills, helps them get used to the different sensations of different foods and temperatures and things like that. Makes it not as foreign when it goes on their plate for them to eat. However, you can do all of that and they still may refuse whatever it is that you've been exposing them to. And it's because tricks don't work. Sometimes they do, or only for a little while. But it's really, there are unfortunately no magic pills for getting your child to expand their diet. Exposure is a really good tool. It's not a miracle. Interest is really helpful, taking them to the grocery store, having them cook in the kitchen, that can, pique their interest, but it may not translate right away to them eating what they've been preparing. But it all goes back to that repeated exposure. Also, I do not recommend hiding one food in another.
That was going to be my follow-up question. Should we be hiding it?
So if you are super worried that they're not getting the fruits and vegetables that they need, and you come up with this smoothie that they love and they'll drink it, that's awesome. I would tell them what's in it. After they've had it and they know they like it, tell them what's in it. Be honest with them, because number one, you want them to know that these things taste good and maybe they like some of them. And you also want them to trust what you're giving them, and you don't want them to become hesitant to try new things because they never know what's going to be in there.
Right. Got it. Okay. So is there anything we can do? Let's say we keep putting this particular food or these foreign foods in front of our kiddo. Aside from just continuing to do that, is there anything we can do to increase the chance that they will then or eventually try it?
So getting somebody else to do something that you want them to do can be almost impossible. However, there are ways to encourage your child to try new things. And believe it or not, it's pretty controversial. But I'm a big proponent of the last bite rule, which to me is a very reasonable request. It is not the clean plate club. It's not, I'm going to keep your plate full of food and you have to eat everything on the plate. It's the last bite is kind of, you may have heard the term the no thank you bite. It's similar to that, except that it's not an option. So the last bite is their ticket to get up from the table. And we can use that in different ways. And, one way is just a signal that the adult is sort of in control of the scene and when you're allowed to get up from the table. And it can also be a useful tool for getting them to at least taste something that's new. And the way that I present this is that you say, I keep going back to broccoli because that's like something that is always referred to in that broccoli is like this off-putting vegetable. A lot of kids love it. So you put a piece of broccoli and you put a whole piece, stalk and floret on their plate, and it's just a no-go. They're not doing it. You can cut that in half. You can cut that in quarters. You can make it so that what you're asking them to do is super reasonable. It's not a punishment. It's not taking away their autonomy. It's presenting them an opportunity to try something that they might not otherwise do. So I'm a big proponent.
So let's, if you'll bear with me for a second, let's role play that, because I know parents find it really helpful. When I work with parents for sleep or potty, especially potty, they're like, tell me exactly what to say, right? I want the exact language when my kid's giving me a hard time. So let's say I'm like, ew, broccoli, hate it. I want to get up. I want to go play.
Yeah.
What do you say in that moment to get the last bite?
So a couple of things. From the start, you don't want to present it as it's a punitive thing. Mm-hmm. You want to start off maybe introducing the language before the new food. So if that makes sense. So before you decide you're going to introduce something new, you kind of incorporate into the family mealtime at the end of the meal. Oh, look, you're almost done. One more bite and we're all done. You keep it really light, very not. It's not a big deal. You don't want to make it a big
casual
part of the vocabulary. It's part of the routine. It's just what happens before you get up from the table. And for some families, that's like no big deal. And then they move right into the new food. For other families, it takes a while because sometimes when you put a demand on a little one, you're going to get pushback no matter how benign the demand is. And so sometimes it takes a while to get used to just hearing the words. I got to take this last bite before I'm up. Once they're used to that, and then you just put a small little piece of something new on their plate, leave it on the plate. If they eat it throughout the course of the meal, that's awesome. You tell them, oh, I'm so proud of you. What a great job. If they don't, last bite comes around. Oh, I see you're almost done. Take your bite of broccoli and you can get up. Okay. Keep it really, you don't want to escalate. So if your child is kind of whining and crying, I don't want it, I don't like it.
That was going to be my next question. If that goes well, great. But what if I start to freak out?
Yeah. So if that starts to happen, you're going to do and so this is part of the benefit of having my support, because this can go a lot of different ways.
Right.
Your kids are going to have their opinions and their reactions, and that's totally normal and expected. And the difficult part is the adult kind of remaining calm, ignoring all the complaining, and just, not excessively, but intermittently reminding them, this is your last bite and then you can get up. Keeping it calm, not escalating with your child. And, this is something that I would talk through with a family that I was working with is, say the behaviors are really sort of way challenging. They start gagging and coughing and vomiting, which does happen sometimes. Sort of working through with the family how to handle that. Because
we don't want it to become like an endless power struggle where we're sitting at the table all day long.
Like I said, the point is not to torture everybody. It's just a tool to help them have that opportunity to taste things that they just really can't do on their own. And there are ways to keep it so that it feels reasonable. That what you're asking is not too much. That what you're asking is not does not necessarily warrant that reaction from your child. It's what they're feeling. It's valid, but there's ways to work through it.
Got it. Okay. So let's shift a little bit to school lunch. I know that was a big challenge for us not very long ago. My son had sensory issues, and so we discovered after a while that the school lunchroom was a very stressful environment, so lunch was not getting eaten. But there are lots of reasons why school lunch could come home uneaten. Can you talk a little bit about them and what to do to counteract them?
So generally speaking, without knowing each individual school lunch is overwhelming. You generally are expected to eat quickly, and there's a lot going on. There's a lot of kids with a lot of needs and a lot of chatter. Some children are in a big cafeteria. It's loud. It's overwhelming. Some kids are in their classroom and, they need help opening things, but the teacher's on the other side of the room. So I really encourage you to find out what happens at school. What is the routine? What is expected of them? How long do they have to eat? Who are they sitting next to? What is going on? Because the more you know, the more you can adjust your expectations and send to school what's going to get eaten and what's going to make it a success for your child. Sorry, were you saying something?
No, I said, got it. Go ahead.
So you a lot of parents stress out about what to send. My recommendation is to send what you know they're going to eat. It might not be the healthiest, balanced lunch, but as a mom and from my behavior perspective, I think it's better to send something that you know is going to fill their bellies than for them to end their day, that have the second half of their day on an empty stomach. So a lot of parents will stress out about sending, healthier options, or, what is the teacher thinking about what I'm sending? I'm sending in like a yogurt and Oreos and a juice box, and a terrible lunch. But it's what your kid's going to eat, and it's going to get them through the day. There is sometimes, like, we go back to those tricks to get them to eat. Sometimes peer pressure or peer influence can be positive. So if you throw something new in their lunchbox, they may surprise you and eat it if they see somebody else eating it. But I wouldn't send it as the only option. You definitely make sure that there's a few things in there that they're going to eat. You also
not a good time to try new things, or especially all things that aren't going to go over well.
Yeah, you definitely want to have something that is a winner. If you want to throw something different in there, that's fine, but don't be discouraged if you see it come home, because that's more likely what's going to happen. Okay. The other thing is, especially with the younger kids, I think a lot of children and parents are caught off guard with how little time they have to eat. So you really want to make sure that they know how to open everything, or another thing to find out is, will the teachers help them open what you're sending? Because they won't. And what do they need help with? Find things that are easy for them to open, easy for them to chew and swallow, that they can eat quick enough and get the stamina that they need for the rest of their day.
Got it. Excellent. All right. Well, those are lots of good tips for families who are struggling. Anything else that along these lines that you think is important for families to hear?
Just keep your expectations reasonable and reliable, and so that your child knows what to expect from you at mealtimes, and what you're asking of them is what they are capable of doing.
Excellent. And for families who want to get more tips, we have a blog post that we published this week, your blog, on our website, beaconfidentparent.com, with more mealtime tips along these lines. And then aside from that, let everybody know where they can find you if they want to reach out about the one-on-one support, where they can sort of troubleshoot those in the moment things.
Yeah, the best way to email or to reach out to me is to email me at toddlersandtomatoes@gmail.com.
And your website too is toddlersandtomatoes.com. All right. And on Instagram, obviously, at Mealtime Helper. Okay. Well, I'm sure that lots of families will watch this on replay and get good tips, and hopefully that makes things less stressful for families. We're just constantly adjusting our expectations for our kiddos, right? All right. Well, thank you so much for making the time. I will make this shareable to everyone, and I'm sure we'll have you back soon to chat more about mealtimes.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day and stay warm.
Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye, Kristen.